Hello, conspiracy players. Today we have a very special guest, the one and only Monica Perez from the Propaganda Report and the Drive Times News Blast, and more recently, Monica's Deep Dives. We'll put all her information in the show notes for you. The reason for this canned introduction is because Jeremiah and I had been recording all day long. We did an episode before having the privilege to chat with Monica, and we were so ready and excited to talk to her that we just skipped right over an introduction and went directly into the episode. So here I am to tell you about it. Also, we had the air conditioning running in the living room. Jeremiah's dad was here this day, and we kind of posted him up in there. So if you hear the slight hum in the background, that's what that is. Apologize for that. But we do encourage you to sit through this episode because it is a real treat. Without further ado, conspiracy players, please welcome Monica Perez.
Hello. Hi. Okay, so I gotta tell you, I have a little laryngitis, but I can do this. I've done it before. I can definitely last 60 minutes, and I have my honey lemon tea, which they taught me in radio, and some people think it's sexy.
There you go. You sound like Tom Waits.
Oh shoot! And I probably got it the same way he gets it. He used to smoke cigarettes and scream into his pillow. Now I wasn't smoking cigarettes. I was drinking and talking, but it's just it was extreme.
Well, thank you for doing this anyway.
I'm happy to. I hope you don't mind.
No, not at all. As long as it's not painful for you, we'll try to get through it.
So is this Jeremiah?
This is Jeremiah.
Hello,
Sorry.
Jeremiah.
Hi, Jeremiah.
We just did a podcast for the last few hours about
Oh my gosh.
Elon Musk, and so we're really hoping that you'll do most of the talking here.
Oh shoot. Okay, I absolutely want to hear the one on Elon Musk. I can't wait. Was it live or is it?
No, I'm a heavy editor for the most part.
Good.
So,
yeah.
but
I like that.
With a guest like you, I doubt I'll be doing much editing. So it'll be
Well,
fun.
I used to do live radio, so I try not to have to be edited, but I just love a good editor.
Yeah, so do you want to start off by maybe telling us about you getting into radio and kind of the road to where you are now?
Sure. Well, I didn't mean to. I was just like a math person, and I was studying for a test, like for a financial credential. And I was just it was so hard that my brain was on fire. And it was almost a little bit, I heard you talking about doing a mushroom trip and saying, like, I just realized there might be a God. I can't remember what your revelation was, but it was like that. Like my brain was so on fire. I guess it's the way they like give you trauma, like the JFK assassination, and then implant an idea. Like my brain was just like open for calculus. And I realized that the left versus right thing was ridiculous, that like everyone was just looking at the other side and not looking over their shoulder at the people on their side, which is what the people they were looking at were seeing. So you just be like, oh, Democrats are such idiots. Like, who would ever fall for that? And they're looking at you and they see like Ted Cruz standing behind you. Like, Republicans are such idiots. Like, why would anyone ever fall for that? And you're like, well, he doesn't really represent me. He's just a politician. So whatever. So I'm not saying I'm a Republican. I'm a libertarian, but I just saw it like plain as day. And then I just very quickly got all anarcho-capitalist. And I met a radio producer, and she just thought it was so cool. Plus, she was girl power, and she just thought like it was so awesome to have a smart chick, and she was libertarian. So she got me on the radio, and I had two rules, which were I'm never going to be a jerk. It was a call-in show, and like they just loved when you were a jerk. I'm like, I'm sorry, like I probably won't be good at this because I'm never going to be a jerk. And I'm never going to say anything that I don't think is true. I don't have to say everything, I guess, but I'm never going to say anything I don't think is true. And not being a jerk was okay. I was okay because there was enough drama in that I was a libertarian and all the people who were listening to me had been like, were listening to Rush Monday through Friday. And then my show is at the same time slot, but on Saturday. And they were just like, what are you talking about? Bashar Assad is the Antichrist. It's like, why? Because blah, 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 blah. I was like, okay. So there was enough with just people shooting themselves in the foot. I did not need the drama of the being a jerk and just saying things I didn't believe. I would never do that, but I really couldn't do it because I had such a tall order. First of all, I had to say stuff that those people who were hearing it all week didn't necessarily agree with. So I had to know what they were thinking and also know the truth. And it had to be interesting. So I finally just, I would just have to like get a deeper story. And I would get that deeper story. But a lot of times it was scary because I started my show like not long before that thing that happened in Connecticut. And then again, the thing that the Boston Marathon bombing. And I would really dig in. Like I would start preparing for a Saturday show on Thursday and I would figure stuff. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe it. But like the newspaper isn't right. You know, I remember looking for retractions. I was like, but I know that's not true. And I would like literally look through the paper and the little thing that would be like, we are retracting, like, oh, we spelled this guy's name wrong. You know, it's like, oh, we, didn't mention this guy was a CIA agent. It's like, oh. So, but it was so fantastic, like for my friend and the radio station, but I immediately scared them. And I had to get like my friend who was the one who kind of discovered me was a producer there. She was like, you can't say these things. Like people are going to freak out. So we got the program director on to like give me the go ahead. And the entire time I was there, it was 8.5 years. I cracked the code on like MH370, the plane, and then MH17. There's a chick named Miriam Carey, Michael Hastings. I actually think he just crashed because he was drunk.
Really?
And yeah, that's like the only one. Every once in a while, like people are just like, you're crazy. I'm like, I don't think so. So I got so many. And then Parkland was February 2018 and the internet closed that day because it was the first time I couldn't crack the code. I was like, oh, there's nothing there. It's gone. So I was like, okay, the internet closed. And then that in August, my website got purged. I was trapped. That's a long story. But and my radio guy, that solid program director, he was so awesome. He was like, wow, that's awesome. Like you should tell people that you got kicked off the internet, but you're still on WSB. And then things just started. He was just like, if you get kicked off the internet again, I'm not sure we can keep you. It's like, it's fine. And then the thing got bought. It got bought, like the day it got bought was the day I was just like, I'm going to play clips from Event 201. That was in February 2020. And then, so the day it got bought, that great program director retired and a new program director who was also great came in, but there was no way, no one was going to protect me then. And they wanted to, like the guys who were responsible for listeners wanted me, but the new owners the financial investor at the very top of that actually stepped down from his position because of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, which was another story that we had hit a lot. And so like, I really don't know why they like frog marched me out of the building in February 2020, but yeah, anything, could have been anything. And I literally in that February, I talked about, I finally like came out about 9/11. I'm like, do we have to pretend like 9/11 wasn't an inside job? And people are just like, what? I'm like, people still don't know that, and they didn't. I was like, okay, all hope is lost. So then I had a producer on that show, really like a sidekick, and Brad Binkley, and we did a daily show together, which I know you know, every single day for 3 years. And then just like personally, I just could not do every single day anymore. But I feel like we served this great purpose in that those 2 years that we were solid on that show were the 2 years of lockdown. Like I got frog marched out in February 2020. And I got just so many emails saying like, if I didn't have you guys, that I felt like I was crazy. Everyone in my life is crazy. And
I'm one of those.
Oh, awesome. Like, I feel like it was like the eBay, who wants your green polyester bell bottoms? Like you're never running into that person in your regular life, but you can find it on eBay. And like, we were just this hodgepodge, and it ended up being many thousands of people felt connected to us that way. And then when it happens to be just like more than I could manage time-wise because of I have a special son and my mom's like, I mean, she's doing great, but she's so freaking old. I'm like, I will really regret not spending as much time as I can with her. And my son's out of school, so I can take him. And we're going to just do a lot of that kind of stuff. But I felt like that purpose was served and that we kind of kept each other going. And we've got, shored up. Hopefully people have their chickens or their dried foods and they're ready for the next round. And I'll be there for it. But I do deep dives. I'm super sorry I told you that extremely long story. But you told me to do the talking.
That's what
and
I
I
wanted.
take my orders seriously.
No,
So now I just do deep dives twice a week. I take one headline and I do like 30 minutes of like, this is everything that I can. And I'm amazed. It takes me longer to do that than when I did a show that was all the news, but I only do it twice a week. So that's really the thing.
Were you originally going to do those every day? Or is it?
No, I was going to do 10 minutes a day. Like I just was going to do quick hits, but that was okay when I was doing it with Brad because we had 10 stories and we would just bounce. It was really fun. It was a very fun show to do. But I could never, I didn't realize that just starting at zero, I can't be like, remember what we talked about yesterday? Well, there's more to that story. I'm just like, oh my gosh. So Roe versus Wade happened in 1972. You can't do that in 10 minutes.
So I do want to tell you your recent one on the shutdown that was doing the baby formula.
The baby formula one.
I've sent that to so many people I know because that should be well known.
Well, that's the other thing that I think is good about the deep dives is that it's topic by topic. So it's everything I can do on one topic, and then you can just share that. You don't have to share 10 stories. Oh, go to minute 12 to hear this little thing. It's just, no, you want to hear about the baby formula. And I was like, baby formula, do I really care? And I read this article about how the FDA was completely responsible for it. There was no sick babies. 20% of all baby formula comes out of that plant. So any baby who gets sick of anything, there's a 20% chance that it came from the baby. So if you have something that gets 20 babies sick, then 4 of those babies are going to have eaten formula from that plant. And that's what it was. It was 4 babies. And they found that what made those babies sick was not in the plant. It wasn't in any of the formula. And not only did they close the plant down, they recalled the formula. Inventory could have absorbed that lag time of another batch. It's redundancy. It's America, so, but they pulled it back and then the FDA got an order, permission from the DOJ. So Abbott was like, yeah, whatever. Okay. We fixed the leaky ceiling. It wasn't even a leaky roof. It was a leaky ceiling. We fixed it. Okay. Can we open now? And the FDA was like, no. And they went to the DOJ and they're like, we need permission to keep this closed. And the Abbott guy was like, what? And then Congress says to the Abbott guy, who's totally Weimar Germany, and they were like the Versailles Treaty, you need to apologize to the mothers of America for your wrongdoing and admit that it was all your fault. And he's just like, you fucking people are crazy. So I don't care about baby formula, but I had a great tweet from Stratman, I think it was, who said they want to get the vaccinated mother's milk into the little babies. So they're pulling back on the formula. I don't know.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And they're using the Defense Production Act because what they're really trying to do is say, baby formula is so complicated that you can't actually have more than one factory in any given country. And we need to get it from fucking France.
And then the administration brags about how, hey, look what we got you.
Yeah, and I kind of think you can just use goat milk. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah,
but
across the board, goat milk can all mammals. Yeah.
Yeah, you can mush stuff up. I mean, look, I have a brown thumb. I cannot grow plants, but I can keep. You give me a mammal, and they cry, they walk around, they crab themselves. They don't get root rot. You don't forget to water them. They will bother you until you. So. I feel like, and I do have babies who did live, so I feel like if anyone could do it.
All right. Well, would you like to shift into the main topic?
Well, wait, hang on. I gotta ask though. So it seems like the timing for the radio show to get bought out seems like very magical.
That's interesting. It was the original owners was Cox Media. And they were really good. Like I think they're probably liberal because they still own the AJC, I think, which is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which is totally liberal, like all local media, print media, in my opinion. But they were so good. Like I think there was only one time, I was there for 8.5 years, and there was only one time I heard anyone ever be told that they couldn't talk about something, and it was like a personal matter of like the old lady's illness or something. I don't know what it was, but it was like some personal thing that she was just like, please don't talk about this. And I would never, I mean, like when my WordPress thing got taken down, they first like said the parent of this person wants you to take that picture down, and I did. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And then they sent me another one and they said, this parent wants you to take this down, but we believe you have fair use to use this, and we've fought it before. Here's the statute, and here are the cases that we have fought. And I was like, okay, I'll just leave it up. And then they didn't take the picture down. They took my whole website down, right? So
didn't you lose a bunch of stuff that you didn't? Sorry.
Because I don't have excess capacity. And I'm not great at that. So then I had to like just have a website made of website, not made of like, oh, hi, Chad. I can't post my thing. And it was like, let's FaceTime, like none of that. So, but what it did was I lost all the media. Yeah. So I used to have all my old shows linked to like my show notes and everything. And it was all gone. I did just, when I was trying to figure out my new feed, my Deep Dives feed, I tried to get my old Monica Perez show feed back, and I found the RSS feed like buried deep. I didn't understand how it worked. And so I now have all of my shows since like January 2015. They're not labeled, but I have stuff in there from Crimea, all of the like false flags that I had cracked the code on. It's just great. I think I just have to sort through it. So it's many, 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 many hours of work. And I wish my kids weren't so spoiled, or I could just be like, I will give you money for work. But they don't understand that language. Like, I study sometimes. I'm not working.
I'd just hire them as interns if I was you.
I can get it done. There's no hurry. And every once in a while I'll like find a blast from the past, and I just yesterday found a video I had made from like April 18th, 2013? I think it was like 3 days after the Boston Marathon bombing. And I'm like, they really exploit these tragedies. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was like 2 days before I was like, holy shit, they actually do these tragedies, like that's when the scales fell off my eye. I was like, wow, this is so crazy. Like this is I'm like, the scales are still on my eyes. So, as the occasion arises, I'll probably dig up those old shows one by one.
That'll be fun. That's a segue then. So correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you say that was kind of your red pill moment, was the Boston Marathon bombing?
Absolutely. So I had a show that day. So I was a weekend host, which, maybe had 20 or 30 or even 40,000 people listen, which is a lot. But the weeknight hosts had like 400,000 people.
Wow.
So occasionally I had this great producer. She was so sweet, and she would just hound the program director. Like anytime anybody's not showing up, like, you put Monica on. So when she left, like I never got put on during the week again, but at that time she got me put on all the time. And it was the Boston Marathon bombing, and it had just happened. And I was like, I figured it out because there was this CNN report in the middle of the night, which somebody captured, of the naked man. So there was a naked man walking around. It was Tamerlan Tsarnaev. They stripped him naked. They put him in the car, and an hour later he was dead. And there were people on the radio calling in saying, like, I saw this SUV run over him several times. It was not being driven by his brother. And then I kind of pieced together, like, that was a cop car. Like, that was an undercover cop SUV, in my opinion. And like, there was some other guy on the ground, and he was just saying, don't shoot. You don't understand what's going on here. Like a white guy. And I was like, that guy is so obviously a cop. Like, he might, you know what I mean? Like the haircut and everything, like he's just like Irish cop. And I can tell you many, many details but I realized what happened, that those guys, Tamerlan, Jahar, and I were in the CIA. And I was like coming out with all of it. And my friend, who's a good friend of mine to this day, she was just like, people are going to hate you. You can't do that. Like, I love you. I want you to have a show. Like, you cannot talk about that. And I was like, I can't talk about it. I used to get so nervous to do the show that, like, once I cracked the code, I was like, oh, I cracked the code. Thank God. You know, the last thing I was ever going to do is like, you crack the code and like talk about some nonsense. Like, I was like, I cracked this code, and I'll tell you about it or not, but I cannot do a show on this that happened today without doing that. She's like, talk about the pressure cooker. And I was like, I'm not, no. So it was like almost showtime. And you're talking to a girl, I used to start practicing or investigating stuff like 2 days in advance. And this was like on the spot. I did all my work that day, and I had to go, and I was ready, but I used to be a nervous wreck. I would get sick. And I wasn't going to go on. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not doing it. And she got the program director on the phone, and she was like, Monica wants to say blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, do you have a good reason to think what you're thinking? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, can you tell the difference between facts and opinion? And I said, absolutely, yes, I can. And he said, well, go for it. He said, we don't like car accidents. So nobody needs to be, if you think listeners are running and screaming and just like, you know, throwing their shoe at the radio, so he turns off as soon as possible, like, that's not going to be good radio. But if you're, you know, logical and coherent, yeah, it'll be good, because it'll be different. I did it, and that was one of the cases where.
Okay, are you filling in on a weeknight on this?
Yes.
Okay, I thought you said
yes.
that.
So I was like bringing my truth to the world, you know, and it was pretty shocking. So it was good, like right then, but this was before I was red pilled. So like, can you imagine like how many people were? It was 10 years after 9/11, but like, I don't know. I just like 9/11. I remember asking people like, 9/11 was an inside job, you know, and he would just like, if you're talking at like, you just fucking crickets, you know. And I was like, wow, you think 9/11 was wow. My reasoning for thinking that 9/11 could not have been an inside job was that there was no way our people would actually do that.
That's like people. The classic.
Yeah.
And
like, I realized,
why would we do that to ourselves?
So then I saw them do it in the Boston Marathon bombing, and then I had another insight which really clinched it for me. But with the Boston Marathon bombing, when I realized those guys were CIA agents, and that I think it might have been Mueller who was like, got up and said, and I remember saying it was like thing 1 and thing 2, like he was just like, there's terrorist 1 and terrorist 2 walking down the street. If you can identify these men, please call the FBI hotline. And I was like, I can give you their addresses because they're on a CIA watch list 1 mile from where you are right now. So I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I think it was Hopsinger, made Daniel Hopsinger, I think he's, I forget exactly how to spell his name, but he wrote some 9/11 books, and he immediately was like, those guys are in the CIA. So, and that's why we got letters from Russia saying, get your terrorists out of Chechnya, you know, and then they were made. Once they were made, that's why they used them as the patsies, I think. So when I saw that, I realized that these guys were in on it, because they were, and then they were like saying things that weren't true. Like, I had been following the story from like that first minute. So I knew who the eyewitnesses were of the guys like driving away, and what car they were driving. And the real clincher was the 2 cops who were killed on the MIT. That was the thing that I was like, this is not true. Like, their narrative here is absolutely not true. And then when I realized that, and I'll tell you about that if you want, but when I realized, that they did that, then I realized, and now I wonder if it was, you know, anybody even really died, unlike 9/11. But 9/11, I realized the way they probably think of it. For a long time, I just thought of it was a black mass, that they just, I mean, it was just evil. But then I realized that it wasn't really any more evil than the historic wars where so many, maybe all of them, or like where you would draft people, you'd make a war, you know, that nobody wanted to fight because it was unjust, and you would drag people out of their houses. It just happened to be like young men within a certain age group, but in this case it wasn't. And you can read the report from Iron Mountain, which says like the only problem with the way we do war now is that we are only killing strong young men, you know, but we should just kill everybody randomly, or even old people and messed up people, which is what they're doing with COVID. So the 9/11, I'm just like, Dick Cheney's just like, okay, we're just drafting all the people who are in, you know, above the 85th floor. Like, that's what we're doing. It's for a good cause, you know, Halliburton revenue or whatever, the good cause. Oh, crazy terrorists, Arabs, I don't know. Whatever.
Well, and also 9/11 wasn't there like quite an empty building compared to how it normally was. Like there was a lot of people that should have been there that weren't for some miraculous reason.
Yes. So they did it early in the morning, but yeah, a lot of people like OKC, where there was a little preschool there. Can you imagine? And like a daycare center, and the ATF guys didn't show up for work. That one,
I know.
I have shed tears over that one. That, no doubt, that really people died there. That was terrible. And that was, I think Biden was probably a big player in that one. You know who else was on the spot with that one? Merrick Garland was a part of that one. There are a few. They tried to get that ATF guy, Biden's first nominee, was there for that one.
Gosh, what is
He's
his
got
name?
such a classic name. It's like
his-
Chet something. Or, something. Weird.
Yes. He had a name like that. There was another guy on there. There was this whole like, the second underwear bomber there was some, I don't know if you remember this, but like Obama was looking at reporters' emails. Somebody blew the whistle on that, and it ended up it was an MI6 agent. Well, the guy who blew the whistle on it, Donald Sachleben, was the bomb expert at OKC for the FBI. And I was like, he's probably just sick of people dying. And then they, by some, as the Washington Post said, bizarre coincidence, they found a bunch of kiddie porn on his laptop. So...
Oh, gotta get rid of him, huh?
Yeah, that'll do it.
So the thing with the cops was the thing that was so interesting. So this is what I think actually happened. There was a cop, Sean Connolly, maybe, who was on the MIT campus as like security. And I should have refreshed my memory on the details. He was shot and killed. He was a friend of and in the academy with another cop named Donahue, who was a Boston Transit cop. So these are young cops in crappy jobs in the city. The Donahue cop was supposedly on the scene, was the first person to see Sean, whatever, that cop at MIT get shot. And he was also zipped. So he heard on his radio, I guess, whatever, that there was a shootout in Watertown with the Tsarnaevs. So he races to the scene. Now, in the earliest reports, there were 6 Watertown cops and no one else. And it wasn't, it was not really shootout. They surrendered, and then you hear a bunch of shots. But there were only 6 Watertown cops. So there was maybe even one article where it said like 6 Watertown cops and Officer Donahue. So, and then Donahue got shot. He got shot in the femoral artery and he lost all of his blood. It took like 45 minutes for him to get to the hospital, all of his blood. And they did like this really innovative Japanese thing where so he's basically dead, where they can pump blood back into you. And if it's within 4 hours, sometimes people reanimate.
Whoa.
I'm telling you.
Oh my God.
So that's the kind of stuff that was lost in my WordPress. I could probably track it down, but I had linked everything. But when I track down the links, most of them are 404 anyway. But at that time, I shouldn't tell people this. I did upload a lot of stuff. So I think that computer's about to blow up, die. So I will not have anything, no reason to come to my house. Not gonna have it. So I don't even know how to access it. But I used to have it all. And then, so I was like, okay, a Boston Transit cop finds a cop shot at MIT, which is in Cambridge. He's the first cop on the scene, and it was a friend of his and a classmate of his. And he calls the ambulance. The ambulance comes. Everyone's just like, holy shit, what happened? And he's like, did you hear that radio call? I gotta go to Watertown right now. So No chance the Boston Transit cop is zipping to Watertown as the only outside responder to that thing. Not a chance in the world. And I predicted this was crazy. I was like, I think they're going to find a cop bullet in his leg, or like the same bullet that Sean was shot with. And a while later, it said friendly fire. And so I knew that was like, what's up? And he's never said a word about it. He has no recollection of the event at all, which thank God, smart guy. But the story, so they said the Tsarnaevs shot Sean Collier, I think his name was. And then there was a shootout in Watertown of the cop who was on the scene there, but he got shot there. That Collier was shot like 6 times by the Tsarnaevs because they needed a second gun. So I was like, okay, so they had a handgun with 6 bullets in it. They shot him with that because they needed another gun. And then they didn't take his gun because they couldn't figure out how to get it out of the holster. So the gun was still in the holster. And the gun was still in the holster, which makes me think that like he was really surprised. I think it was unrelated. I think there was something else going on that night. Something really fishy, like mob type thing. And they just folded it all in together to make the narrative more robust. Because then they also had the carjacking thing where they carjacked some guy in the Mercedes that they said ran over Tamerlan Tsarnaev, but the initial reports and the final reports and the pictures in Watertown and the Bolo Beyond the Lookout report was all them in a green Honda, which was their car. So why would they hijack somebody? And then the hijack victim was a white guy who was talking to an Arab guy in a gas station. And then the next day or while later, John Williams or John Roberts, I forget his name. It's one of those very simple names. He's now the PR guy for the New York cops, but at the time he was a reporter for CBS. And he interviewed the carjack victim in shadow. And then the guy's name became Danny, and he was Asian. And the reason he wasn't killed by those people is they only hate Americans, not Asians. But really, the carjack victim was a white guy. So I don't even think the carjack victim had anything to do with the Tsarnaevs. It might have had to do with the Collier thing, but I don't think it had to do with the Tsarnaevs. And then it was like the Tsarnaevs were throwing bombs out the window as they were going. They were untraceable, even though they were calling their mother. So, I mean, my sister lived in Massachusetts at the time, and she was telling me how, and actually her son lived in Watertown. She was telling me how they found some high school kids making out on the football field because the mom panicked and was looking for them, and they just traced them by the cell phones. So they did it for the high school student, like that same exact time, and they couldn't figure it out for these guys. Just all these pieces did not make sense. And actually, it was funny because like I did all this reporting on it, and I was so technologically incompetent that I somehow, like, I posted all my work to like a third party, like a libertarian website, and it went super viral, and I forgot to put my name on it. So my only, my one, like internationally viral. It's like,
might be for the best.
Maybe it was a good thing, yeah.
Oh yeah, maybe. Alex Jones literally like lifted the pictures and everything because I went through all these pictures and I found that Tamerlan Tsarnaev had been a centerfold in a boxing magazine because he was going to be a professional boxer.
Yeah, he boxed overseas for a while.
Yeah, and that's how I had pictures of him topless. That's how I could compare him with the naked guy. And I was like, he has a very distinctive, pectoral layout. It was like very rectangular with these like weird little nipples on the outside. I was like, there's, I've been to the beach. Like that is not what you see every day. And the chick with him, his Brazilian girlfriend, was his wife, Catherine Russell, whose father or grandfather was like military intelligence at Yale. So there's, he didn't meet her in a bar, and also a radical Muslim. Like there was no, none of that was true. They had a baby. The younger guy, Jahar Tsarnaev, was in dental school, and he went to Boston Latin, which is a very prestigious school because they were in the CIA. I don't think he was, his brother was, but the uncle, Ruslan Sarny, who was like, those boys need to turn themselves in. His name was Tsarnaev, and he was married to Samantha Fuller Tsarnaev, the daughter of the CIA chief of Kabul, Afghanistan, who suggested radicalizing Arabs in Chechnya as the peak oil moved from the Middle East into Central Asia. He's like, we're going to need to move to Central Asia because that's where the oil reserves are gonna, we're peaking a little bit, I think. But I don't know if that's even true. But that is definitely a quote from him in a book called Dollars for Terror. And that book was before 9/11, so it wasn't as like censored as after. So
Wow.
and it was Graham Fuller saying some of the documents I found about Tamerlan Tsarnaev was that he was at the Jamestown Foundation, which is like a CIA training outpost overseas. I forget what country he was in, and that he was in Chechnya connecting with, and I'll never forget it because I had to look up this word. I didn't know what it meant. Venal imams. So I guess venal means you like money. And then this goes back to the whole Clash of Civilizations by Samuel Huntington and Bernard Lewis, where they were radicalized Islam. So way back when they did the Sykes-Picot Agreement, they broke up the Middle East and made it like a patchwork. They wanted to divide the tribes up so they had no power. And then over time, with people like Nasser and Egypt and other secular leaders like Assad, Gaddafi, all the ones we take out, they were making those patchworks work, and they were secularizing. And then they were, we weren't going to be friends with them because they were asserting, a kind of nationalist, socialist, not Nazi, but like they were socialists. They were owning it all from the national level, but they were trying to like give it to their people in a socialist fashion, which I don't approve of, but they were just allying with the USSR or whatever. So it seems to me that once that kind of patchwork thing stopped neutralizing them, the plan became get them tribal again and insert into their religion. The Muslim Brotherhood was infiltrated by British intelligence like in the 30s. Then they were big in Egypt in the 60s, and then they even went to Syria. Egypt and Syria were one country for like a couple of weeks. It was very weird.
Really?
Yeah, so they were there too. Yeah, it's really weird. So they made a tenet of Islam like to not be materialistic and not, made all these rules that made it hard to be industrialized. I'm not saying I know this. I'm no expert in it. I'm just telling you what I've read. And, as I synthesize the information into a narrative that I think fits the facts, I remember these things, but and I could probably find sources for you, but this is my impression. And I'm sure scholars can, flesh it out more or maybe knock some pegs out of it. But I think they went in there and they're like, okay, we need to like tribalize this again. And we take out all the secular leaders. And that's when one of the things that Tamerlan Tsarnaev was actually doing was in Chechnya, meeting with those imams and radicalizing them in Russian territory, Chinese territory, stuff like that. I believe that's when Russia just said, hey, we're on to this guy and we don't want to see him here anymore. And we were just like, Russia identified them as terrorists before we did, but they're still terrorists. It's like, no. Russia identified them as our terrorists.
Yeah.
And so that, there are other details to it, but that's what I think happened. And then the last thing is, I saw a picture of Jahar Tsarnaev, the younger brother, shortly after he was arrested. Apparently, they did surgery on him because he was in like scrubs thing with like a hat, like a.
Is it because of his throat where he was shot, or?
Yeah. So he was on a slab though, and he didn't have like, he didn't have a tube down his throat or anything, a ventilator. And in the articles I'd read, he could not be interviewed because he was on a ventilator because he was shot in the throat. And I was like, okay, I'm not seeing that, but I am seeing like a massive incision here. And a lot of like red pooling of blood. Now he could have, it was red enough. He could have still been alive, but the narrative wasn't holding up because then in the newspaper, like side by side, this was also on my website, and this might have gotten purged. Certainly got like the links went away, but that they were saying like he was on a ventilator, he couldn't talk, but he was, had a lawyer, whatever. And he was just completely unaided in any way. So it's like either he's in better shape, but for some reason his eyes are completely closed and he's on a slab, or he's dead. And I went with he's dead. And I was like, you're never going to see a picture of this guy alive again. I said in April 2013, whatever year that was. I was like, you'll never see a picture of this guy alive again. So 2 years later, he goes to trial. And I said, hey, I said we'd never see a picture of this guy alive again. Let's see what happens. So that day, I read there was a line of press a mile long around that. And that's all. I don't even believe it, but that's what I read. And not one of them got a picture of him. In the court, they did their drawings, but Nobody got a picture. And his friends who were interviewed said, and I quote, "It didn't even seem like the same guy." I was like, I'm sure it isn't.
So is that why they put him on Rolling Stone? Was to just kind of like say,
Oh.
here he is?
Those pictures were totally photoshopped.
Right.
Those pictures, I think, were way before. Shortly thereafter, I went back on the air and I said, I told you you'd never see a picture of it. And they had been listening to my show at that. That was the only time I really definitely had like the FBI listening to my show, or whoever, you know, and they were calling me and stuff. It was like very scary. And well, I shouldn't say scary. I was an idiot. I was not scared. But trust me, if I ever have that experience again, I will be a little smarter. No, just, this is what I used to say. Don't kill me, just fire me. And they fired me. I was like, thank you. I appreciate that.
It's dangerous to be the first one to say anything.
Yeah.
you know?
Well, it's dangerous to say. What they don't like is if you get out of your silo. So there's no silo, like the radio, even if it's left, right radio, it's out there. And so now it's nice that I can inform people and hopefully someone else will take that baton up. But I can't reach people like I used to. But they were listening, and a couple of days later, they put this really weird, twisted picture of him, like in a fisheye lens, looking up in his cell. I don't know why they twisted it up, but I was like, oh, wow. Like they listened to this. And then another really crazy thing happened. So they went down to Florida. There was a guy, Ibrahim Todashev, God rest his soul. He was one of 13 from, I think he might have been from Chechnya. He was gym buddies with Tamerlan. They weren't good friends, but they were gym buddies. And Ibrahim Todashev said, like, Tamerlan had been calling him saying in that one day when he was on the run, he was saying like, hey man, I didn't do anything. I will tell you the story when I see you, but I am completely innocent. And Ibrahim Todashev knew that and he believed it. And he got a ticket back to Russia. He was like, I got to get out of here. And the FBI said, would you not get on that plane? We want to interview you. And he did. He let them in his house. And he said to his friend before he went up there, I was like, I'm scared of going up there. And his friend was interviewed on the TV that I can still put my finger on, saying he was totally afraid. He did not want to be alone with them. They shot him 6 times in the body and once the crown of the head in his own house. They said that he was like, had a broom handle or some, right? So they killed him and his father was insanely furious, as you can imagine, but like he was Chechnya, but he held a press conference because he was in Chechnya, not here. And that guy's wife called me. She called me because I was on the radio. I mean, it was very high level, like my covering this. It was very weird. And I said, okay, I'll interview you. I don't even think I ever put it on the air because my show wasn't an interview show. And I was so like pedantic. I just never fucking took interviews, even though it was such a huge interview. But I wanted to talk to her anyway. And I was just going to post on my show. I don't even remember what I was going to do with it, but I wanted to do it from the studio because of the sound quality. And I had to call her from there. And she was in Russia because I could not get out on that line. I had to wait. It took like 2 hours for me to track down somebody who could get me a code to type into the phone that I needed to give to the studio to record a phone call interview. And there were 2 things that I thought were weird. One is, I think she was estranged or it was a marriage of convenience with Ibrahim Todashev. That was my opinion because it looked to me like he was definitely living with a woman and there was a picture of him kissing her. And so I said to her, like, you know, whatever happened to his girlfriend? She was like, his girlfriend? And I was like, oh, well, sorry. You know. And then I said, so you talked to Tamerlan Tsarnaev's family. Is Jahar Tsarnaev alive or what? And she's like, oh, yeah, they just think that they're pinning it on him because they don't know who did it. And I was like, So I don't know about that. I still have in the can. Renee Todashev, her name was. But yeah, so like a lot of weird things came out of that and then it went away. But people I got like a message. I really care about you, care about your show, but you should stop saying I'm 100% positive. You should just say, I think, or it's my opinion. And I was like, no, but I am 100% positive. An idiot. Anyway, so I guess it's better that I don't have that opportunity to be that stupid anymore.
Hey, I mean, There's nobody out there really doing it.
After I left the radio station, that's when they came down with the election integrity stuff. Don't talk about that. And that was the only interview I ever did, was the guy whose name I won't tell you because it very closely, I don't want to say his name because I got so close to getting kicked off all of my YouTube channels because I put a bunch of his stuff. I finally went in.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I went in and I actually just deleted. I didn't even back them up. I was just in a hurry because I only had one strike left and they were just striking them like this. And I just went in and deleted all of my videos and I have no backup, but I just deleted it all. Not that my YouTube channel's that valuable, really is not, but I just hate to like lose stuff. It hurts. And so anyway, but that was my thing. That was the one thing I did. And I mean, that could have been enough. I mean, that honestly, if I had to guess, like that was I wasn't digging into the election thing yet because it was before the election, but they know what's coming. You know, they knew Georgia was going to be a big part of that. They knew I had always called out Brian Kemp, Stacey Abrams, all their shenanigans on the election stuff. Like, you know, people like Kemp now, and I'm glad for them, but he definitely had a dereliction of duty under him when he was Secretary of State before he became governor. But I mean, obviously he's better than Stacey Abrams.
Well, I love how Binkley goes after Stacey.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite things.
Yes, it does. He really, she just pisses him off. I think he just doesn't like the way she looks, or I don't know, like, you know, he makes fun of her weight. But for me, I don't like her. I mean, she did an internship with Yukos Oil that was that was part of a program of Henry Kissinger, like on the board of Yukos Oil, where they were teaching Russian kids in Russia about American democracy. Like they were infiltrating, you know, it was like Russian election interference. Like this was literally a maneuver. Like, what does she know about oil? She was in there because she's just a world player. And I did say all along that she was being trained to be world president. And then she was on a sci-fi show, some Star Trek, as president of the universe.
Yeah, of everybody.
Galaxy.
And she was so happy in that picture.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she's not really a great actress, but of course, like all the great politicians, she was trained as an actress.
She's not a very good novelist either. I've read excerpts of it.
Yeah, I did buy one of them, and it was about like a filthy preacher, so like sexy preacher.
Yeah.
And but she was an acting major. She went to an art school.
Kind of sounds like AOC a little bit.
All of them. Oh yeah, they're created persons.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the created persons and the sacrificial wolves. Like those are my two big expressions that I coined. So I had a glossary. It's okay. It's still there on monicaperezshow.com. Although now I'm changing my URLs to monicasdeepdives.com. But my old glossary is pretty cool because it's almost like a retrospective of like as they change, you know, they open it like, so chemtrails and something. I'm sure they're going to admit to social engineering, to solar engineering, whatever, solar radiation management. But along the way, they have other like expressions. And so in my glossary, I put stuff like, manufacturing advocacy. So Noam Chomsky's manufacturing consent. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm on the radio. Rush Limbaugh is manufacturing advocacy. When I'm like, do you believe in sovereignty? Oh yeah, like keep those Mexicans out. And I'm like, okay, why are we bombing Syria? And they're like, because he's a monster. I'm like, okay, so you're gonna bomb Syria. It's like, why is he a monster? Well, he locks people up for like political persecution. I'm like, okay. So you're gonna go in there, you're gonna bomb it, you're gonna open their prisons up, right? That's what you're saying you want to do. And then they're gonna come here because that's how it happens. Afghanistan, Ukraine, like they come here. And then what do you tell me? You tell me that I can't have my rights anymore because terrorism. So why don't we just let them keep their terrorists? And so, but I had these people manufacturing advocacy. Like they were advocating, they believed it. Like these were not FBI agents. They were CIA people. They were Rush listeners. And they were like, you're dangerous. Like, I'm dangerous.
Well, I think we have a few minutes left if you're ready. So I was
just breathing so that you could get a word in edgewise. I can keep going forever.
Did you hear anything about MIT cops being involved with the Aaron Schwartz stuff?
No. When was that?
Oh, you know
when Aaron Schwartz was? My thinking about his situation has changed a lot over the years.
Well, you know he's a doorknob suicide.
Like Anthony Bourdain.
All of those, yeah.
Anthony Bourdain. And Kate Spade, who would never, but anyway, I don't know what she was up to that, maybe it was just her husband, David Spade's brother. I don't know.
Yes, there's a lot of theories there, but they had something to do with his arrest, and it was really fishy.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. I didn't look into that. Originally, I thought, I always try to put my libertarian touchstone first, like above my conspiranoid one. And now I know people say post-libertarian, and I definitely saw that coming. I'm like more post-ideological. Like it just doesn't even, ideology is a distraction. Like ideology at this point is the problem. And we're getting, our ideologies are morphing and polarizing and radicalizing, and that's just making it worse. But I always look to the libertarian thing, and my idea there was that this is a private institution, and he has no right to hack into that. But there's a lot of things wrong with that now. So MIT, I dare say, is not a private institution. It is because it can operate behind a cloak of privacy because it's supposedly private. But it's definitely an outpost, like it's an NGO or whatever of the defense agency. And I mean, Stanford's even worse in that, it was out there that all started. The defense industry was out there, and then tech, was an offshoot of that. So, and I didn't even know Siri. You know what Siri is? Siri is the Stanford Research Institute. That's how it got its name.
Really? Not kidding.
Funny. And I found that because I was investigating the 2017 SPARS document, which I don't know if you know that. It's a script of
we did a huge episode on it.
Media.
I heard you are the one who let me in on that.
Because there were two ways to look at it. The Alex Jones way, which is, look, this is all about vax injuries. And my way was like, this is all about propaganda. This is the subject, the meme that we're going to float, and this is how we're going to deal with the propaganda. So the guy who wrote that was a guy who was part, I don't know if at that time or previously, the Global Business Network, which did the 2010 Rockefeller Foundation scenarios. So it's like they figured out of the 4 scenarios they were going to do, they figured out which one, and then they dug into it for the 2017. But that guy was at the Stanford Research Institute and the Esalen Institute and stuff in the 60s. Like that, nothing gets deeper state than that guy, whose name I forget. Probably a good thing. See, I used to think that the accountability and transparency of NGOs was the same as the government agency that established it or funded it, but it's actually not at all. That's why they use mercenaries. That's why they have a human rights industry. That's why they have all this stuff, is just for that reason. And I mean, I bet In-Q-Tel has some kind of privacy that the CIA would not be able to if it actually wrote the checks itself. So I don't count it as private at all anyway. By funneling a lot of research into these private institutions, you crowd out like any private research money anyway, because nobody could keep up with it. Or you literally push it out of the way because it's frowned upon. And you will say to MIT, if you're going to work on that, you're not allowed to work on this. So I think there was one philanthropist who wanted to work on therapeutics for COVID rather than vaccines because he felt like you needed to be able to do that. And he said, he was like your total kind of, let's party with Elon or whatever. But then when he got into it, he was like, oh, they won't give the results of our trials. The people on my board who I thought were on the level won't allow us to disclose this information because they have an agenda. My point is just that to demonstrate that they crowd out research that way. And what really pisses me off is they take that, the government funded subsidized research, and then the products of that, the fruits of that, corporations can buy, if I'm not mistaken, from the universities. And then they have patent our genes and stuff. Michael Crichton wrote a great, Pulp Fiction, Next was the name of it. And he was so way ahead of it, which they probably shot him up with a little cancer just to, it's a real skill to be able to, a gift to be an expert who has integrity and can articulate things in a simple way. And that's what he had. So I'm sure he had to go. So that's why, and now I think that Aaron Schwartz was right in that was public, and they use that against us. We can see now with COVID that they just use that, all that that research. I mean, who knows where they're doing gain of function stuff? Like that is in no doubt in my, and the lab leak theory is a whitewash of the bioweapon used on us. I think is a reality. Like I think they spray that stuff. You can look in the history of bioweapons, they sprayed it on Americans in towns and stuff. I mean, since the beginning. I have a hard time understanding the contagious nature of viruses. I have an easier time, and in my experience with COVID, believing that the vaccines, which were the subject of research to make vaccines contagious. So I think vaccines are contagious, and I think I got COVID back in January 2021 from somebody who was freshly vaccinated. But I don't know if you get, I just don't, I'm not 100% positive the nature of contagion, but I do know they work on gain of function. I think there was one thing I just read in passing about them working on like smallpox, like increasing contagion of like, so they definitely gain of function includes making things more contagious, definitely. And I assume that's what went on here. But do you have an opinion on it?
I remember you had a story about the 5 places where Omicron broke out, where they were testing the vaccine.
Yes, it was the 5 places that they tested. I think Japan maybe shut down the testing, and I don't know if anything ever emerged from there, but it was at least the 4 places, and there were only 5 places if you include Japan. It was South Africa, Brazil, the UK, and one other place. I can't remember. Maybe it was Kenya, where they were testing the AstraZeneca one. And it was in South Africa that they said, oh, people are testing positive for AIDS after getting the vaccine. So that's where there were a bunch of new variants emerging, like beta, gamma, delta, Omicron, whatever. And every single one, it was like 1-to-1 correlation. Every one of the new emerging variants was emerging in one of those 4 places. Just 1-to-1. And another thing they did, which was extremely irritating, is that there are 4 kinds of coronavirus: alpha, beta, I think delta, and gamma, right? That's the order goes in.
I don't even know anymore.
I think that's a Greek alpha. I have it on a mouse pad. Those are different kinds of coronavirus, like one that affects human beings, one that affects animals, blah, blah, blah. The coronavirus that we have, I believe it's a beta coronavirus. And then if you want to distinguish variants underneath that, traditionally, like it was a bunch of letters like BA2, like the whatever, Omicron BA2, but it's never had those Greek letters because that indicates a higher level, like a clade or a genus or whatever. So it makes it sound like it's huge variant, where if you were just to say it's a BA4 that morphed from a BA2, I don't know if you're gonna, it's as freaky as like, she's got the Delta, she's got the Omicron.
Right.
So they did all this funny business to make it seem scarier, but I guess it morphs, but there's no doubt in my mind it was originated as something artificial. That was intentionally obvious.
I was always under the impression that like every time a cold or a flu passes from one person or another, that it's got a chance to, be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Just because it's like that's just the nature of little.
That's why it's never the same.
Right.
Year
exactly.
after year.
Yeah. And like they're always gambling with the flu vaccine of like, I don't know, it might be this one this year, and we'll try it out.
They always said you couldn't get the same one twice. And to be honest with you, I never really understood that, because first of all, my son got the flu one year, and the next year he got it seemed like the exact same flu. And I was like, okay, so you're going to give me a flu vaccine that's last year's thing, and he actually had it last year and he has it again, and you're telling me that thing is going to work? I mean, I never fell for that anyway. And also, when you get strep throat, see, I believe in bacterial infection. That I do believe. So, I think it is a bacteria. Like, you can see it. I think if you like zoom, you don't need an electron microscope. You don't need a priest to explain to you. You ever see the electron microscope slides? Like, they're colored. They're like red and yellow. And if you look at the fine print, it's a graphic representation.
It's like pictures from outer space that NASA shows us.
Oh my gosh, Mars. I'm sorry, but Mars looks so much like Devon Island. Oh my gosh. Like, to the point where you can see like the same mountains and stuff.
Warren von
Braun.
Yeah, so he actually worked with Walt Disney at one point to help create stories about outer space
Wow, because he said no to the moon landing because we needed super fuel, right? And one time I was out here in LA and I saw like it looked like a fluorescent line in the sky. And since then I was looking up why those Kansas sprites, those red sprites, like there was that fire in Kansas and there were these red sprites that were shooting up and it just looked like chemicals igniting. Like I was like, what the fuck did they spray on that? Like they're like, oh, it's once in a million years. It's like, come on. It's much more likely it's fucking napalm, right? So I was like, what's red? Like barium, I think. So I was just looking up like barium and a NASA thing came up and it's like, this is what barium looks when you shoot it into the sky. This is what this other stuff looks like when you shoot it into the sky. And there was this like weird rip and I was like, that's exactly what I saw here a while back. And what it was what they said. So there was no announcement, but if you looked up what was overhead in LA, it said Elon Musk shot off a rocket with some new fuel. And at that time, I was like, oh, they might actually, they're trying to get to the moon. I don't know if you guys realize that, but they're trying to get to the moon.
We forgot how.
It's really hard. They can't do it with rocket fuel. They can't figure it out. So they have to get some new fuel. And I just, it's just so funny. It's like 9/11 or JFK or whatever. Like all of a sudden, these people who just like Republicans did it. And it's like, so you can find people who think 9/11 was an inside job. And you're like, so you think 9/11 was an inside job, but you still think that we're operating like a what you see is what you get constitutional government when every president and every party has covered that up, JFK, like what makes you just ignore that? Like teachers will teach in school, it's in the textbook, even though secretly they really believe, they really think that JFK was murdered. It's like, how can you just ignore that? So I don't know how people can just ignore that we were told we went to the moon and we just can't figure it out right now. Like we
haven't gone back.
But Mars is
and
easier.
Mars we're floating around. I did, yeah. Like I'm right near JPL, not right near, but like not like a JPL thing. And
Don't dox yourself, Monica.
no, bro. Well, it's big city. So, and hopefully I won't be here that long. I rent. My lease is up in November. I'm leaving. So, you meet people at whatever, in town, and I just get nervous because are they lying? Like, are they, I don't know. I've known people who've said like my uncle was a CIA agent and you're like, I thought your uncle had a pizza place. And it's like, oh, so he's like, I work at JPL. It's like, what do you do there? Like, I don't know. Math.
Like, it's all really compartmentalized, so they have no idea.
So maybe they don't know. I don't know, but maybe they do know. Like, I don't know that either.
Right.
So in LA, it's weird because you'll go out to eat and like your waitress will be the most beautiful woman you've ever seen in your life, and you're just like, wow, like never seen anyone that beautiful in real life. And like, that'll happen to you a few times and you're like, oh, all the beautiful people in the whole entire world have come here because they get paid to be beautiful here. And so that gets them out of all the places that I've ever lived before and it gets them all in here. But there's other stuff here like that, like the defense industry. So you're going to like run into people who know stuff, I guess. I don't know. One time somebody said to me that he worked at a news agency and I said, oh, do they like censor the news that they push out to the newspapers? He's like, oh my gosh, every day of the week. And I was like, wow. I said, because I try to tell people like it's us versus them and it's totally controlled. And the guy said, yeah, I'm them. And I was like, what? And I just kept blah, 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 blah. My husband literally.
He's Winston from 1984?
Was Winston an inside job?
Well, Winston was the guy who was memory.
Yes,
in the news.
no, this guy wasn't Winston. He was, Big Brother. Like, because my husband literally, I could feel I've never in my life has he been subtle in any way, but I could just feel his hand on my elbow. And he was like pulling me away and it was like a work thing. And he's like, he's telling you that he's them. And I was like, oh, he's like, yeah. And then his associate was like, what was the name of your radio show? And I was like,
I don't know.
It's not good. It's not good. She's like, no, he'll listen to it. He's always looking for something interesting when he's on the treadmill. And I was just like, yeah, I can't remember.
Wow.
My husband was like, okay, we gotta go. You know, and I get nervous. Like I'm a total, like it thrills me to crack codes, and it scares me what's happening to this country. And I have a lot of integrity, and I really, I have a lot of integrity. I'm just saying, like, I don't, that's all I care about. Like my dad taught me to be like this, and it's all I care about. I'm not materialistic. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm just saying I'm not like a hero. I just like to analyze stuff, and I'm stupid about like talking about it all the time to everybody, including like my kids' teachers and stuff. And there's like one time they went to this tiny school, which was Catholic, but real like homeschooler, tiny school. And there was that thing of like the Coptic Christians getting beheaded or something on a beach in Libya. So then Egypt sent fighter pilots, and the Pope started praying for those people, and literally buried on Fox News was like, yes, this is clearly photoshopped. And it gave a bunch of reasons why. And my kids came home and were just like, oh my God, we need to bomb Libya. And I was like,
Oh my gosh.
hold the phone. I never complained ever. I went to the principal, and I would, as my father would say, like, you wouldn't say shit if you had a mouthful. Like, I do not like confrontation at all. And I was just like, look, lady, this is completely fake. And she was just like, are you suggesting that the Pope is lying? I was like, oh, no. I think he's getting stovepiped. Like, she's like, what? Like, okay, I have to show you this. And she, to her credit, she looked at it, she accepted it, and she never talked about that stuff again. And They used to talk about it at assembly. Yeah. Wow. And they never talked about it again. That was the one exception to my rule of literally people like not sitting next to me anymore at like the Little League games. It's really funny because it was like a circle of don't sit next to Monica. I don't know. I don't know.
Have you ever seen the movie Network?
I'm not going to take it anymore.
Have you seen the movie?
But doesn't he say I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore? And not.
Do you ever feel like that?
I don't. I try not to get. It's like when my son was born with Down syndrome. For 2 years, my husband and I would look at each other and just like, I can't believe our kid has Down syndrome. Like, it's just so weird. Like, I can't, like, what is it? It's just weird. And it was shocking. And it just took 2 years for it to just penetrate my noggin. And then I brought my little baby daughter home, and it just changed everything because I just felt very healed and renewed. And then I could think straight again, whatever. But that's kind of like the COVID thing did to me. I was just like, and I was the one. Like, I was the one that people were just like, you're out of your mind. And here I am, like, I never even guessed. I never even imagined how effed up this could be, and what sheep you all are. And what was I supposed to do? I don't run around fighting. Like, I would go around to the grocery stores and I would say, hey, the masks are bullshit, right? And people would go, literally one lady went like this to me with her arms so that I would be 6 feet away. I was like, oh my God, lady, you're dying before the year's out no matter what, because you're a million. But I'll stay away from you. You're not going to be better off. That mask is not good for you. But, this is probably my 10th year of broadcasting in one capacity or another. And when I was on the radio, I remember one board op was like, wow, like, I wonder if he was like trying to tell me that like I was a great host. He was like, I really get the impression that you go to sleep worrying about this stuff. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Of course I'm worried about what? And he was just like, they used to, I think I was the novelty act. They would laugh. Like, I would just, like with the anarchism, they're like, you're the anarchist, right? And I was like, yeah. They're like, that's a good one. I was like, no, I'm dead serious. They're like, oh my God. Oh shit. I get it now. She's the best. And I was like, I think, I make logical arguments. I don't understand why you guys make fun of me. I was a little insulted.
They can't wrap their mind out of not being controlled 24/7. That's what it is. It's
a
knee-jerk reaction.
In the radio realm, I felt I had to share my story with the world. Like, I wasn't looking for broadcasting. I had stage fright every single solitary time I went on the air for 8.5 years, like sick to my stomach every single time. So it wasn't a favor to me. Like, it was, and when I got fired, it's like, great. Like, I mean, I love my boss and everything. I'm not saying and I really love the callers. And so as far as stress level, just absolutely plummeted. But I never met anybody who didn't really, really, really want that daily show, like really, really cared about it more than anything else. But I had kids and I couldn't even have taken that job if I was offered it. And other people would, they were just reading the Wall Street Journal and regurgitating the headlines. I'm like, why do I have to work so hard? You know, and my boss was like, I don't care that you're a chick. I don't care that you have a Spanish surname. The only reason you are here, although that stuff is cool, there's two reasons. Guys are driving home from work and you like look like their wife. You talk about the stuff that, you know, your wife is like making chicken or whatever. And then you just fucking like, oh my gosh, the Boston Marathon bombing was fake. And they're just like, tell me more. And he says, and when you talk about like the Fed, I think they just love that. Like chicks doing math. I mean, you might as well be hammering a nail. So that was a good one. So, but I didn't really care. So people really did care though. And what he said to me was the real reason I was there is that I was saying something different. He said that you're saying something different. You should have confidence, because I was nervous because I was saying something different. And he said, no, that's why you should have confidence. And I'm like, yeah, but people like hate on me a lot and they make me cry and whatever. And he's like, that's why you're here. And I was like, nobody else is saying anything different. You know what I mean? Like, and they would screen out Ron Paul calls. It's like, you can't take a fucking call from a Ron Paul supporter. You can't argue with a guy who wants to restore the Constitution and you call yourself a conservative? Come on. So I was like the home for people who had that point of view. But he told me one other thing, which was you want to be old enough to be perceived as wise, but young enough to be sexy. So it was, and then I could never tell my age again because he told I never cared about my age at all. And after that, I was just like, I'm 40 something and I always will be.
Good rule of thumb.
I think I can maintain that for another 15 years.
I think so.
So that was the story of my radio career. I hope you didn't have another question, because
no,
I'm just kidding around. I just went like mile a minute for the entire time, but you told me to
that's
talk.
What I wanted this, and I just want to drop in one thing because I'm a huge predictive programming guy. So, episode 15 of season 11 of Family Guy aired March 17th, 2013. It's entitled Turban Cowboy. And there's some Boston Marathon bombing predictive programming in there.
You know that Seth MacFarlane
I do.
was supposed to be on one of those flights.
And Mark Wahlberg.
Oh, I did not know that.
And they're both cranking out propaganda now.
Here's where Seth MacFarlane, I think this is when he lost me, like that there was no plausibility to his story because it was a perfect storm. It was a perfect storm. He was just like, I was super, super hungover, so I couldn't get my shit together to get to the airport. And my travel agent gave me the wrong flight information. Okay.
His
funny.
Family Guy is a perfect storm, too. It's the only show that was ever canceled and picked up by the same guys that canceled them.
Oh, yes, I knew it was canceled. And actually, the first season, the season that was canceled, when it was canceled, I loved it because Stewie was a Nazi who hated his mother. He wasn't a pervert. He was a Nazi. Yeah. And it was great because I'd certainly had the experience of having little babies by then. And if you look at what a little baby is doing to you, so they shit all over everything, it leaks out their pants, and then you're trying to clean them up like a dignified person like myself.
And then they piss all over you.
I'm like elbow deep in like yellow diarrhea, and then it pisses in your face, you know, and you're like, oh, I love you. I don't mind. It just pisses in my face. And really it's saying, I hate you. It sucks coming out. I was so much happier inside. How could you bring me out? Like, just that is a cold wipe. Like, why are you doing this? I'm going to fart in your general direction. Like, no, you will not take it for what it is, what it looks like. Any observer from another planet would be just like, how is she waiting on that little gross thing that's just spewing all over her? And her greatest dream is for this thing to get bigger and leave and never come back. You know, like that's your only hope. If it doesn't work out that way, you have failed. And I used to always say that. I was like, I don't mind waiting on them hand and foot, but do they really have to like piss in my face? Like, I just don't understand why it has to be so painful for everyone. Like I'm just trying to rock you in a rocking chair. Do you really have to arch your back and try to do backflips onto the ground and crack your head open? Like, do I have to save you from yourself constantly? And the answer is yes, you do. And so they're deaf and little babies are Nazis, and it was genius.
Well, neither one of us have kids, and I don't think you just sold it on us. So
Sorry
No.
about that. I was informed on the whole. You hope they leave because I'm the youngest of 9, and like my mother, the only ones that haven't given my mother constant grief are the ones who basically she hardly ever sees. It's like, oh. So that is one reason why I've decided to just take some time off and go hang out with her because she's so awesome. But she's really awesome.
Well, that's good. And I don't know, did you have anything you want to talk about before we
I don't think so.
get
I
out
think,
of here?
I think we're at a good, yeah.
Any closing statements?
Well, it was super fun talking to you guys. I really enjoyed it.
Your voice is sounding all right.
Yes, I think I just it's just like when if your one eye is blind, like your body just turns the other and it's just completely cut off all the high end. And it's good though. I think I had a German boyfriend once who used to say I had a dark voice. You have a dark voice. So, but I used to smoke cigarettes. So it's the good old days. I really do like the deep dives. I hope you like them. But I also do buddy dives. So if you would like to be a buddy dive, you can send me the file to the show and I will put it in my feed. So I will tell people how to find me, but if you tell people who you are and how to find you, my listeners would like to probably know that as well. So I'm Monica Perez. My Twitter handle is @MonicaPerezShow. My new show is Deep Dives with Monica Perez, which you can find on your favorite podcasting platform. And it is commercial free until August 1st. So you should stockpile it listening. I'm getting trolled already in the review section. People are like saying stuff about me defending Clarence Thomas. And it's funny because it was as soon as Roe dropped and it had the Clarence Thomas thing, somebody wrote that review on this Deep Dives feed, which I just started like 2 weeks ago, which definitely had nothing to do with that. But I kind of liked the review. The slam was kind of like, anybody who can't handle this should not be listening to my show anyway. But I wouldn't mind some reviews. If people do like the show, I'm going to have to get ahead of the trolls. And that's it. So it's super fun. And I love talking to, I love my buddy dives. I really enjoy talking to you. So how can people find you?
Well, we have a website.
conspiracyplaytime.com, where all of the episodes are hosted, even if they get removed from YouTube, along with email.
Can't believe you're
list,
still
of
on
course.
YouTube.
We're small
somehow.
enough.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to get off
I
there.
say
We'll
Sandy
see.
Hook at least 3 times an episode.
Oh my gosh, really?
No,
Wow. Oh,
No,
was
I
like,
think he
wow.
said it a couple times, though.
at
I
least
would
twice.
never say that. Oh my god.
I'll cut it out before I send it to you.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
I will.
I actually had a YouTube video removed before it was fully uploaded. It was like,
Yeah,
give me a
wow.
strike. It didn't even
Yeah.
get uploaded yet, and it was private. So so you're still on YouTube. The
Still on
Conspiracy
YouTube.
Playtime.
Yep. And then you're on Twitter,
Yeah.
Conspiracy Player.
Conspiracy player without the E in the player. And
I do enjoy tweeting with you.
yeah.
He's
when
become
you,
quite the Twitter.
when you started
Yes.
tweeting me back, I was like, man, I should just ask her to come on the show.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I knew because you have clever tweets. That's why I was like, oh, this guy's smart. So.
Hey, I'm aspiring to be the next Cam Harless.
Oh my gosh, I think he was set up a little bit. I think.
Oh,
No?
it's starting to look like, I totally
I mean, I
agree
thought
with
that
you.
immediately because
Yeah.
there is absolutely no way a new hire in Washington, and that is what I texted him. I was like, watch your back.
Anyone on Tucker.
Yeah. But because that chick was newly hired to the Washington Post, what a job! Like,
And her name's Felicia.
oh.
Bye, Felicia.
So there's no way she would mouth off to a seasoned reporter publicly without the go-ahead. No way. So, and of course, Cam is a bit of an easy mark with his unapologetic, like, because his jokes can be super, super alt-right because they're jokes.
Exactly. People
Like,
don't
you
get
know what-
that. I see some of his feedback. Ooh.
No, but he's trolling them.
I know. They don't get it. They think he's serious.
No, I know, and it's just dangerous. It's just dangerous for him. And he like was starting a yeard, so he had a beard and really long hair, so he just shaved everything, his head and everything. So all of a sudden he's like a skinhead. I'm like, Cam, This is not.
He's leaning into it.
Sometimes
he
you have to do
is-
that, right? You know,
he's-
to get the publicity.
Yes, he's incautious. But anyway, so yes, if you aspire to be the next Cam Harless,
Just a
act
little.
recklessly.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Monica. We should do this again sometime. And do you want me to just send you an audio file after I
Send me
edit
the whole.
this?
Send me everything.
I will.
Yeah.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks so much, guys.
All right. Have a lovely day.
Climbing up the top sails, I lost